Welcome to Wooper Club Season 6 Power Rankings, now post Week 8, now that that is in the books. We have 1 week left, running out of time to figure out where everyone is going to be seated here at the very end of the season. I am Nate, or IllLogic, coach of the Buffalo Bouffalants, and as always, I am joined by my co-host, Steve, coach of the Waterdeep Wobbuffets.
Hello, everybody.
And let's jump into what we have seen after a thrilling Week 8. And that is going to be a big change at the bottom, a little bit of shuffling around in the middle / top. Just a quick rundown. Waterdeep Wobbuffets up at the top, the Summit County Side X number 2, Buffalo Bouffalant 3, Cincinnati Incineroar 4, Close Combat Club making a reappearance in the list at 5, and the Akron Agrons down at 6. So, again, this is just for clarification for later in the video. These are just the power rankings, not the actual standings. We'll kind of get into that a little bit later. With 1 week left, we would like to talk about the playoff chances for everyone. But for now, let's just kind of go over how everyone got here to start off with. So we're going to kick things off with the number 16, the Akron Agrons, who actually faced off against yours truly in the Buffalo Bouffalant, the 3 seed. The 6 vs 3 seed was a very fun match. Steve, don't you talk about this one first?
Yeah. So Joni and his Akron Agrons brought a team of Chansey, Galvantula, Noivern, Incineroar, Lycanroc Midday, and Rillaboom. And they faced off against Nate and his Buffalo Bouffalant, bringing a team of Dragapult, Magnezone, Sandaconda G-Max, Mantine, Colossal, and Tangela. And this match ended up in a 6-0 victory for the Buffalo Bouffalant. Really, the first sign of danger for Joey was up against the Magnezone. He had his safe Magnezone check of Chansey in, ignored the fact that Magnezone was setting up a iron defense, because what could that mean? And then Chansey just fell to a body press. After that, it really started falling apart for Joey. He didn't have great moves against the Sandaconda, really didn't have a way to break through that. Nate, on the other hand, some smart team building with Magnezone, of course, being able to remove Chansey, and in general, fighting being decent against most of Joey's team. Hitting Galvantula and Noivern for not very effective, but those are both frailer mons. Nate, of course, also had some smart switching, moving into the appropriate defensive checks, moving between Magnezone, Sandaconda, and Tangela to check the physical threats, bringing in Mantine and Colossal when needed. Outside of that, there were some real exciting things, trapping the Rillaboom with Sandaconda and then allowing Tangela to eat it up, as it was choice locked into a grass type move, which Tangela just walled completely. And all in all, throughout the battle, Nate looked like and had perfect control and was able to get that perfect match. I don't know if you have anything else you'd like to add here, Nate.
Yeah, it feels good to be able to keep the Rillaboom down. I knew that was a big threat, and keep Dragapult barely on top of the KOs for sure. Joey had some good coverage moves for threats, but I don't know how much more effective they were than anything else. I think the Incineroar put it around pretty well, but otherwise, yeah, I mean, the body press zone was, I thought, just a fantastic bring. The Tangle walling with the Rillaboom was hilarious. It was just very clean. I thought it had a very good matchup on it, and definitely well needed after a tough loss the previous week to the Psyducks. Hoping to kind of get some wins against some of the top teams here, and that was definitely sorely needed for my team and my confidence overall. But that'll move us up to the number 3 spot in the power rankings, which is pretty nice. So we're going to move on now to the number 5 team. The Close Combat Club makes a reappearance despite actually a pretty poor record right now. We're moving him up here because of an impressive performance this week, as well as his potential playoff chances, which again we will get into later. So John and the Close Combat Club fought Michael and the Kanto Kinglers, and John brought a team of Keldeo, Haxorus, Amoonguss, Slowbro, Gmax, Snorlax, and Klefki, and actually also got a 6-0 victory. Not that many close matches this week, so this was a big dominant win for John. Definitely helps the differential out a ton, which was sorely needed, and a big win against Michael as well, for some potential tiebreaker implications later. For this match, I just thought it was an incredibly effective Klefki set, setting up the screens against Michael, who, while he has various ways to set up on his team, his very interesting team-building ways don't necessarily mean that he's setting up offensively. So there wasn't a particularly great way for him to take advantage of the time it took to set up the screens. And Klefki was just kind of able to sit there indefinitely, honestly. Through the first about 15 turns, John swapped out into Slowbro once, and then swapped back into Klefki, and it just kept working. It was very difficult for him to break through the steel typing there, and Slowbro, a couple times did come in very effective. The Scalds were very powerful. Took advantage of the rain aspect of Michael's team too, powering up the Scalds pretty well. And again, just those two bonds in particular, taking advantage of the lack of pure power on Michael's team as he was trying to get a couple of gimmicks there set up. Would have been very cool to see the Shell Smash Shuckle into Copycat Espeon. I thought that would have been really sick, but again, Klefki hard countering that with a Prankster move. Just stopped the Shell Smash setup. Was almost very hyped and excited. But John just played even and steady. Slowbro, again, a nice answer for almost everything, and big shout out to that GMAX Snorlax, is one of his newest acquisitions there. The two things that I think stood out as big damage dealers on Michael's side were the Toad and the Espeon, and Snorlax was able to handle both of them with ease, tank both of their hits with absolute ease, take them down very quickly and efficiently. And after that, against Slowbro, Klefki just kind of walled the whole team, and there wasn't really much else that Michael could do about it. Very effective gameplay style from John. It worked very well, and he's very much getting back into the thick of things for the playoff race, which is very cool. I know there wasn't too much more to it, but do you have anything you'd like to add there, Steve?
I'd like to again highlight the Snorlax. I agree the Klefki was probably the MVP, but the Snorlax set was great, and John pointing out just all the coverage options Snorlax has and how effective a Dynamax user it can be. Just being able to pick, your select coverage moves, bringing Grass for Seismitoad, bringing Electric for Skarmory, and just putting in the work there. Darkest Lariat for the Espeon. Really cool set to see and very effective in the matchup to break through Michael's team.
Absolutely. And we talked a little bit after the match, too, about how you may think at first glance the GMAX Snorlax without the berry to help it out or without leftovers to help the classic Snorlax set. Not necessarily needed. Because we don't have an item, GMAX have been much more about getting the select coverage moves, just getting a ton of HP for that hit, which Snorlax already has a huge reservoir of. So actually making it work in the way that GMAX Snorlax is supposed to work, I think, in this particular format. So big props to him on that one. Moving right along, then we had another high-profile match between the number 4 team and number 2 team, the Cincinnati Incineroar, taking on the Summit County Psyducks. Take it away if you would, Steve.
Yeah. So Matt and his Cincinnati Incineroar brought a team of Primarina, Diggersby, Cinderace GMAX, Orbeetle, Inteleon, and Clefable to face off against Zach and his Summit County Psyducks, bringing Gengar GMAX, Kyurem, Vaporeon, Reboot, Bronzong, and Serena. And the game ended up in a 5-0 victory for the Summit County Psyducks. Starting out with the Psyducks here, Zach had a great team. He has a great team. This defensive core he brings and the pressure it's able to apply while slowly whittling down his opponents has got him some really big wins over the past couple of weeks and throughout the whole season. He's made very effective use of Toxic throughout the whole season that has really crippled his opponent's ability to fight and have any HP left at all. Zach had some great switching to appropriate checks to Matt's offensive threats, rotating between the Vaporeon and Bronzong especially, which did a fantastic job of walling almost everything. Specifically, the Bronzong in against the Clefable enabled to get off that heavy slam to remove Matt's really key defensive answer. Without Clefable being healthy, Matt's team quickly fell apart. In addition, I'd like to shout out Stealth Rock and the excellent pressure it put on. Matt was forced to make a ton of switches, especially to kind of reset that Toxic counter, and the Stealth Rock there the entire game, chipping away, put in a ton of work. Vaporeon, once again by Zach, played very excellently, able to stay in on the Cinderace GMAX and wall it very easily. In addition, having that protect, being able to protect against the high jump kick and cause Cinderace to hurt itself for the most part. And great job cleaning it up against Diggersby, who at the end was the last mon standing and forced to choice lock itself into U-turn in order to hit the combination of Levitate Bronzong and the Ghost type Gengar. So overall, great job from Zach and well-deserved 5-0 win. On Matt's side, opened up with Orbeetle for early screen and web support. He's been doing that the past couple of weeks, and it's something we're going to likely continue to see from him. He had some excellent use of pivot moves between U-turn and flip turn on most of his mons. The Clefable, huge, of course, with the aromatherapy or heal bell to cure his team of the toxic that was so prevalent. The issue was that he didn't expect Bronzong to be a threat when Bronzong very easily was able to remove a ton of Clefable's health and make Clefable useless the rest of the battle. And Matt ended up having to sack Clefable, and after that, his team was just on a timer. Matt did have some chances to get back in, made a gutsy play to use Surf on the Vaporeon, hoping that the Vaporeon would switch out, fearing the revealed Energy Ball from Primarina. However, Vaporeon stayed in, and from that point on, it was very clear who was winning. So overall, great job from Zach. Way to fight Matt. But Zach was definitely the better player and better team here. Do you have any additional comments?
Yeah, I think the things I liked the most from Matt included the Diggersby. I thought was played pretty well. The coverage on Primarina was great. But all that just kind of played into Zach's strategy. As we saw with his victory against me the previous week, he was really able to take advantage of choice items very well. He's been using Protect extremely well on Vaporeon and Bronzong both the past couple weeks to punish choice users especially. And then, as you were saying with Toxic, the Life Orb on Primarina just adds up way too quickly for Matt to be able to do anything about. The defensive pressure was just outstanding. And Vaporeon's been played so well all season, knowing that Vaporeon just switches it on the Primarina every time. The fact that Bronzong can Toxic stall out so many things, only really fearing the fire and water coverage from Matt's whole team, stalling the Diggersby out almost indefinitely. Effective switches, very well done. Honestly, embarrassing some of the top teams here the past couple of weeks, which has been super impressive to see. He is the one who's taken down the 1, 3, and 4 seeds himself. I think the only other one with wins against any of us would be you. So very impressive on that front as well. And speaking of you, we will be once again showing that the number one team is the Waterdeep Wobbuffets, and this time it is because he is standing alone with 1 loss, 2 through 4, all with 2 losses. So big congrats there. However, this was not necessarily the easiest of games for you, Steve. So we'll go into that a little bit. You're facing up against the Cleveland Castforms down near the very bottom of the league. And your team, you brought Eldegoss and Skuntank for the first time this season. We do have a requirement that you have to bring all of your mons at least once, and these were a couple of Steve's tier 5s. He also, of course, had the Lycanroc Dusk, the Scyther, the Aegislash, and the Cinderace. And this actually ended up being, strangely enough, the only close game of the week in a 0-0 victory for Steve. You heard me right, 0-0. That would be because the final hit done by Lycanroc onto the Ferrothorn took the recoil from the Iron Barbs. But through technicality, Steve still does get the 0-0 win. So how did we get to that point? Honestly, I'd say the tier 5s weren't used particularly effectively. I'm not a big Eldegoss fan myself. Skuntank, it's okay. They're tier 5s for a reason, sure. But Eldegoss got a sleep off, sure, that was very cool. But Dusclops ended up only staying asleep for 1 turn, which was some pretty poor luck, but it is kind of what it is. The Skuntank had a very interesting idea with Red Card, and that definitely backfired. And then going for the Memento right after, that also kind of backfired too, as the Scalpy just tried to set up in your face anyways, kind of negating the effect of that Memento. Again, just a couple bad luck plays there too, the 1-turn sleep on the Dusclops, as well as a very big dual Wink Beat miss. That was absolutely huge. I really can't say enough how much that mattered there. I think Scyther could have put in a ton of work there. But as it is, you need to rely on just your big hitters. You brought the Aegislash and the Cinderace, the ones you can rely on for sure, and your kill leader in the Lycanroc, which still remains 1 behind the Dragapult, I must add. But these were good KOs that you picked up the Aegislash whenever things got a little bit rough or hairy. You can count on your Aegislash to come in there, both in or out of Trick Room, depending on what you need to be outsped to. Ended up being very effective with that, which was nice. And just great cleanup with the Lycanroc in general, understanding that you needed the Swords Dance up to Oko the Ferrothorn, and being willing to take that hit from the Scalpede that you needed to in order to get to that very endgame scenario, which, again, was a very close call, very fun match to watch. But ended up pulling it out nonetheless, and sometimes it doesn't need to be clean, you just need to be able to continue to winning. You're still going to remain the 1 seed, and as of right now, you have a clear shot to the first round bye. So anything else you'd like to say about your 0-0 match with Matt and the Castforms?
Yeah, there were definitely misplays on both sides. You mentioned the Scun tank with the red card backfiring. I definitely should have just used Memento on the Porygon 2. It would have swapped out in Scolipede, but Scolipede at half attack would have been a great opportunity for one of my sweepers, probably Lycanroc, to set up. Looking at his team, Lycanroc at +2, one-shot everything, including the Lapras and Dynamax. So that was clearly the path. It might not have done Dusclops actually, but Dusclops isn't a threat. Um, but trying too much to feed Lycanroc kills, trying to be a little too gimmicky, nearly cost me. But Lycanroc surviving that Earthquake at 15% meant I had 2 attacks to win it, and that was all I needed. So it ended up working out.
Absolutely. It didn't need to be clean. A W is a W in the end. So normally we'd be wrapping things up right here, but this is, you notice, post week 8, and we only have 9 weeks total, which means only 1 week left, and it's about time we start talking a little bit more about the playoffs, if we haven't already gotten your attention with that in previous weeks too. So again, these power rankings are just how we're determining people have been doing. As an example, I am actually technically the number 2 seed at this exact moment, 1 point differential ahead of Zach and the Psyducks, but the Psyducks have gotten 2 fantastic wins in back-to-back weeks, so we both agreed that he should be ahead of me up there at the number 2 spot. So how are we looking actually in the standings? Well, we thought it'd be fun to kind of go through the 8 teams that are competing for various playoff spots and go through their chances of achieving for the top 4 teams who are kind of separated up there to try to see what they need to do to get the number 1 seed or a first round bye. Remember, only 6 teams make the playoffs. Top 2 seeds do get a bye. So for the first 4 seeds, what their odds are of getting those spots. And for the 5 through 8 teams who all have a chance to make the playoffs and all have a chance to miss out, what needs to happen for them to make it. So let's get cracking with the first team on the list, the overall first place team right now, and that is you, Steve, with the Wobbuffets. So you're sitting at 6-1 right now with a +18 differential. So you get the first seed. If it is relatively simple, already only having 1 loss, you just need a win versus Joey and the Agrons this week, or if you do lose, you just need to get the point differential over the rest of us. I'm the closest to you at +14, only 4 behind you. Zach and the Psyducks at +13, 5 behind you, and Matt and the Incineroar are 9 behind you, which would require a big win from him and a big loss from you. So, according to your calcs, you've shown that you have a 73% chance of getting the first seed, 93% chance of getting that first round bye. Definitely helped by me and Matt playing each other, and that means your lowest possible seed is 3. So I want you to go a little bit more in depth about those numbers or anything else you find interesting about your team right now.
Yeah, just for everyone at home, these percents are based on assuming that there is an equal chance of each of the 4 remaining unplayed battles ends up in any of the 14 possible end states being anywhere from a 6-0 win to a 0-0 win, 0-0 loss to an 0-6 loss. So these percents are just saying out of these 14 possibilities for all 4 of the remaining games, these are all the hundreds of thousands of ways it can end up, and those placements are here. This also, just for ease, doesn't look at tiebreakers beyond point differential. So as you're going through, you might notice that the math doesn't always add up to 100%. That's just, right now, these numbers are assuming if 2 people tie, they both place at the higher position. Of course, that will be worked out, and there are further tiebreakers laid out, but it's just for simplicity here, it's close enough to just use this quick approximation.
Absolutely, and again, for some of these teams, for you in particular, it's super easy. If you win, you're stuck with 1 loss and you're the first seed, right? So it definitely gets to be a little easier when you're already this set. And again, in case of tiebreakers, we do have those set up and in place, but super simple scenario for you. First seed, 73% chance. Gotta be feeling pretty good about that. So let's move on to the number 2 seed right now, and that is me, the Buffalo Bouffalant, at 5-2 with a +14 differential. There is a chance, somewhat small chance, 18% chance for me to claim the first seed. So what needs to happen for that? I do play Matt in the Cincinnati Incineroar this week, so I need a victory there, obviously. But I also need Steve to lose to the Agrons, pretty obviously too. We all need to be down at 2 losses for me to be able to get there. And the final factor is that I do need that point differential over the Wobbuffets and the Psyducks. Psyducks are behind me, but even if I do win, they have a chance to pass me up. So that is something that can happen. I can also get the 2nd seed if I get the win versus the Incineroar, and just a higher differential than the Psyducks. So if Steve does win his match, say the Psyducks don't end up winning, or I win basically just by more than they do, I can still claim the second seed and get that first round bye. And the first round bye overall, we're looking at a 45% chance of happening. Though, of course, I cannot drop below the 4 seed, which means, again, those top 4 seeds are pretty separated right now, and we'll kind of go in more detail once we hit the playoffs if we think there's a chance for an upset there, if anyone can take down our top 4 teams. Anything else you want to add about the 45% chance I have at that first round bye?
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely looking good. You are, I believe, the most likely to play second overall. You're currently in second. It's kind of at the moment roughly your spot to lose. But at the same time, there are some teams, especially Zach and the Psyducks, that are coming in hot and really looking to take that spot, or maybe even the 1 seed and bump you down to 3. So, gotta keep your guard up.
Absolutely true. And depending, too, if I think that the Incineroar are going to be a likely opponent in the playoffs, maybe we won't even go all out for that first seed. We'll kind of see. It depends, though, too. Whoever has to play in that first round is going to be playing against a team that is doing well and perhaps is hot right now. So don't know if we want to risk an extra shot at being eliminated very early. So with all that being said, let's move on to the number 3 team right now, and that is Zach and the Psyducks. It's also sitting at 5-2, plus 13, just 1 point behind me. Thank goodness for that 6-0 I got this week to help me separate just a little bit from him. So Zach has a 13% chance of the first seed, and he can get that first seed if he gets a win versus the Steamrollers, obviously, and once again, if Steve and the Wobbuffets lose to the Agrons, of course. And he also needs point differential over the Wobbuffets and the Bouffalant. Slightly tougher for him because I am 1 point ahead of him, but otherwise it's basically the same conditions as I would need to be able to get that first seed. Again, only at about 13% chance right now, but still possible. And he can still get that second seed too, if once again he beats the Steamrollers and then gets a higher differential than basically the winner of me versus Matt. So one of us has to lose if Matt wins, and this Incineroar win. It's a little bit easier for him, just because he already has a +4 differential advantage over him. So if Matt does get that victory, very simple for Zach and the Psyducks to just win and get that second seed or the first round bye. And we've got him at a 38% chance to win. Once again, unable to go past that number 4 seed down below. Zach is coming in hot. I'm pretty scared of this. I don't know if I wanted to try to get that first round match against him. What do you think?
Zach is definitely the team I am most scared of. It's also being my one and only loss, maybe a little justified. But I very much would prefer that you and Zach stay on the other side of the bracket and we'll take each other out.
While understandable, I would prefer that not to happen, but we can't always get what we want. So we'll see who has to deal with this absolute menace in the next couple of weeks, then, won't we? Well, let's move on to the last of the big 4, and the Cincinnati Incineroar, also at 5-2, but only at +9 now after that loss to Zach and the Psyducks. He has a very small chance of that first seed, mostly because that differential is so far behind yours right now, Steve. So he has a 3% chance, and he, of course, can get in if he beats me, and you lose to the Agrons, and then he needs point differential over both you and the Psyducks. But again, that is a very big gap to overcome. He's only at +9 compared to your +18, so we need something like a 5-0 and a 5-0 in order for him to pass up there and make up that huge differential, not to mention Zach faltering a little bit there too. He can also get the second seed if he beats me and gets a higher differential than the Psyducks. Again, a decently large gap. The Psyducks can still win, say 1-0, but if Matt wins 6-0, he gets it over Zach and the Psyducks. He can also get there if the Bouffalant lose as well to him, and then you lose, but he also can get a point differential over you. So this is the situation where Zach can leapfrog you, and then Matt can also leapfrog you up to that second seed. So overall, we're looking at a 30% chance for that first round bye. Still very possible. Again, 2 through 4, all very close in there. A lot of it is going to ride on the margin of victory for Zach's match, as well as the outcome of my match versus Matt. And once again, lowest possible seed is only 4. Matt has had a couple of tough losses, but overall looked very consistent and solid this season. So any other thoughts on that before we move on to the other 4?
Yeah, definitely these top 4 are all, for the most part, interchangeable. With you and Matt playing each other this week, one of you probably ends up in the top 2 and the other ends up in the bottom 2. And it'll come down to point diff with whoever has the same record as Zach. If I lose, there's a point diff. We're all very interchangeable in these top 4 spots. Some of us may be favored in one direction or the other, but it's really going to come down to margin of victory on these last games.
Absolutely. None of us want to be caught off guard in a first round, and it'd be nice to see us four, if we've been this good all season, to face off again in the playoffs. But we have some competitors that are looking to knock us off our pedestal. So, again, if we're separated up here but still very close together in this top four, the next four are just as close together. And looking for those last two spots, the 5 and 6 seeds are up for grabs right now, but the 7 and 8 seeds are looking to come up and take them. So let's start off with the current number 5 seed. That is Joey and the Akron Agrons. You can already see the differential there with being 2 games behind already. At 3 and 4 with a -5 differential. Joey does still have a very good chance to make playoffs. We're looking at 88% right now, but he does have a very tough match ahead of him. If he wins against you this week, he's in. And it's that simple for Joey. Just win and you're in. However, if he does lose to you, there is still a chance. Because if the Close Combat Club struggles and loses to the Cast Forms, he's also in. It's the only, he needs 2 teams to be able to overtake him, and that's one of the 2 that would need to win in order to do so. So very simple and easy for Joey. Additionally, even if he does lose and the Close Combat Club wins, he can still get in because of point differential due to the Close Combat Club being another full game behind. So even if the Steamrollers, and the Combat Club are all tied, the differential can still end up saving him potentially there too. Just because he's done a better job than some of the other teams around that area in getting up to -5. So how does he miss the playoffs? First off, he needs to lose to the Wobbuffets. He needs the Close Combat Club to win, and then that point differential again. It's relatively close. He's only at -5, and then Chad and the Steamrollers are at -7, and then John and the Close Combat Club at -8. It's still possible that he loses and remains ahead of them, but it's so close, it would be tough to imagine him losing, John winning, and it gets to be a very difficult road at that point. Perhaps if he loses by less than Chad does, ends up being a little better, but we're looking at 88% chance because there are 2 spots left there. He can drop down to the 6 and still be a little more comfortable with making it there. Joey's had a very tough second half of the season. He started off very strong. What are some of your thoughts on his team and his chances in the playoffs?
I mean, there's 50% of them that say Joey wins, and we can just throw those out the window. There's no way he wins.
Fair enough, yeah.
But,
you have to be confident.
He definitely does still have a fair chance to make it in. The best of these remaining teams, even with a loss, his work so far has put him in a decent spot. But some of those early losses to some of these other teams that he's grouped with can come back to bite him here and make him miss out on the playoffs.
Absolutely. An early loss to Close Combat Club, and then just losing by 6 to me this past week could end up making a big difference there in that differential count. If he'd gotten a couple KOs, a bit of separation would have been very nice, I think, for him. Would have given a little more comfort in making it, but as it is, still a pretty good chance. So the current number 6 seed, we've got the Seattle Steamrollers and Chad at 3 and 4 and a -7 differential. We've currently got him at a 76% chance to make the playoffs coming off of his bye week. So how does he win? How does he get in? If he wins against the Psyducks, again, another very tough matchup. But if he wins, he's in. And it's pretty much that simple. He can also make it if he loses against the Psyducks, and then the Close Combat loses. But he also has to avoid the 6-0 loss, because we've got a whole other team in the mix there in the Kanto Kinglers, who are at -12 right now, 3 and 5. But they have a bye week for the final weeks. They are static right there. So basically what we're saying is if Chad at -7 loses 6-0, he goes down to -13 and suddenly is behind the Kanto Kinglers. So he needs to get at least 1 KO there and probably hope for a Close Combat Club loss or just win and he's in. The only other way that he can make it in there is if he loses versus the Psyducks and gets that record or point differential over 2 of the Agrons, Close Combat Club, and Kinglers. There's a little bit to go over there, but again, it's super simple. Win and you're in. Right, that's all that really needs to happen. Avoid the 6-0 loss, stay ahead in differential ahead of teams like the Close Combat Club and the Agrons, and you should be just fine there, 76% chance. So he's going to miss playoffs if he loses against the Psyducks first, and then also the Close Combat Club wins, and he has a 6-0 loss, or if he loses against the Psyduck and does not get that record point differential under 2 of the Agrons, Close Combat Club, Kinglers. Kind of seeing how these 4 teams are very much in the mix with each other. Although the Kinglers can't pass up Joey, they can still pass up Chad and the Steamroller, so he needs to be a little aware of that, and at the very least avoid the 6-0 loss to stay out of Kinglers. There are some tiebreakers if they both finish at -12, but Chad has those under control as of this moment, so long as he gets 1 more KO, thanks to an earlier victory over the Kinglers. Anything else you'd like to add about Chad's team? He made a couple of late-season acquisitions and will maybe have a tough match in the final week, because he has to bring those transactions, or they're in the final week.
Yes, yeah. He did make 3 transactions at the trade deadline, trading away his Venusaur G-Max, his kill leader, coming in with 3 new mons that must attend this final match will definitely make team building a lot easier for his opponent, Zach. So he definitely has kind of a hill to climb. So winning in might not be the easiest thing, but these new mons, if he's able to make it into the playoffs, will definitely kind of give him an edge where everyone else knows what to expect from each other. But Chad traded away kind of the core of his team. So now no one really knows what to expect. He's got some new acquisitions, like especially in Volcarona, that are going to be quite scary. It will be very interesting to see if he makes it, if these new changes are able to push him into second place where he wants to finish.
Chad, of course, notorious for finishing in second place 3 seasons in a row, I believe. So, yeah, definitely the new acquisitions. If he ends up being more comfortable with those than his old team, this is a wild card one to look out for. I would be kind of terrified to have to face him in the first round, but that may be where we're heading. So we'll kind of see where we end up with that. So currently outside of the playoff race, we've got the Kanto Kinglers, who are again 3-5, -12. They have finished their season because they got their bye in the final week. That means he only has a 7% chance to make playoffs, and he can't do anything about it anymore, not at this point, and thanks to that giant loss to the Close Combat Club this week. So there is only one scenario in which he makes it in. That is the Seattle Steamrollers losing 6-0 versus the Psyducks, and then the Close Combat Club also loses, which means that they would not be part of a tiebreaker equation. If that all does happen, though, his -12 differential gets ahead of the -13 that the Steamrollers would have, and he'd have a better record than the Close Combat Clubs, who would sneak in there at the number 6 seed. Pretty interesting there. It's just going to mix the playoffs if the Seattle Steamrollers get a win or the Close Combat Club gets a win at all. So, Steamrollers with a KO, Close Combat Club with a win. Nothing you can really do about that anymore. Definitely a creative team, a lot of creative, interesting sets, but it feels like he fell off quite a bit late in the season. What are your thoughts on that?
He definitely had some creative things and caught some early people off guard. It might have just also been the strength of schedule going on. He's faced some of the higher seeds later in the season. As for things he could do to help, I'm not sure if his unique team building is a pro or con, but depending on what it is, he could talk to the people who needs to win or lose and either offer them advice to make them worse or better based on how things work out. So he definitely could try and be a active part in team building to help or hinder people, but that's about all he has left in his means to get his own way in.
Pretty much true. He does have a big win from early in the season against Zach and the Psyducks, but that seems like a far-gone memory after a 5-game losing streak to finish off the season. Still best of luck. You still got a chance to make it, and if once you're in, anything can happen. And finally, we have, coming back from the depths, the Close Combat Club, still sitting only at 2-5, which may seem pretty bad there, -8 differential, but we're still showing a 36% chance to make the playoffs, and that's actually relatively simple. He can win if he wins versus the Cast Forms, and either the Agrons or the Steamrollers lose with the point differential going towards him. So he's at -8, the two teams ahead of him, the Agrons and the Steamrollers, at -5 and -7. That should be relatively easy to overcome if they do lose. Say, for example, the Steamrollers lose 1-0 and he wins 1-0. Suddenly they swap, and John and the Combat Club up to -7, Steamrollers down to -8. That's all he needs in order to sneak in there a little bit. It's just as easy with Joey. That's only 3 points separating them, so if he gets a 2-0 win and Joey gets a 2-0 loss, he's suddenly in. The Cast Forms have been struggling quite a bit this season too, so this seems like a very possible chance for him to sneak in there. Imagine a 1-5 team winning the last 2 games very effectively to make it into the playoffs at the very end. It's still relatively easy to miss the playoffs. There are still a lot of things that need to happen. For example, if he loses to the Cast Forms, that's it. If both the Agrons and the Steamrollers win against, mind you, the 2 highest teams according to our power rankings, but if they both do win, John is out there as well. And finally, he could still finish under the record or point differential with the Agrons and the Steamrollers. It would need to be both of them for him to miss out, but it is still possible. We're looking at some 0-0 situations here, though, so that's relatively unlikely. Honestly, if every single game goes according to who is favored, John should be getting in, which is really impressive considering everything that's happened. And he made a couple of transactions very late as well, gotten a couple weeks now to get used to them. We talked a little bit earlier about the G-Max Snorlax. There are a couple weaknesses that have propped up on his team. But very impressive he's able to turn the season around this late. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I definitely, if I were to pick six right now, I think John would be part of the six I'd pick to make it. As you mentioned, facing off against the number 9 should be a easy enough win. Definitely try and get as much of that differential as he can.
I don't know
And
if
then
you're one to speak about that easy victory, but
hey, hey, I got a victory.
fair enough, fair enough.
And then, as you mentioned, the two people he needs to lose are going up against our 1 and 2 in the power rankings, who we're seeing, doing the best. So it's very, very likely, in my opinion, that John is able to get this win, get some help for our other teams losing, and sneak in there as the 5 or 6 seed.
And we did talk a little bit earlier about how those top 2 teams in the power rankings may want to just kind of win just to try to get those top seeds locked down and get the first round bye. So they still have something to play for, which means there are a lot of meaningful matches in the final week, week 9, which makes this all the better, all the more exciting for everyone involved. Even the bottom seed has something they can play for. They can force the Close Combat Club to miss out on the playoffs. So everybody is still relevant, everybody's still in play, and has something to play for in the final week. And that's exactly what we wanted to see coming into the season. But this has been a long enough video already. I hope you enjoyed our take on what the playoff scenarios look like. Thank you for joining me as always, Steve. Next week, we've got a final 6, and that's going to be very cool to see. Maybe we can go a little bit more in depth, break down some of the matchups. We'll kind of see what we're feeling, how much we want to expose of other teams before they even just start prepping for their matches. But we can at least go over some of the surface level things and tell you all what all is going on for the playoffs this season. It's almost here. We're making it, and we're going to maybe even try and get finished up before Christmas, which would be very cool. That'll do it for us, and we'll see you next week.